good enough is okay.
Yeah.
You know, I see so many SMEs, and one of the tips would be, don't strive for perfection because you'll never get the product to market. You know, the key is get a minimum viable product to market that someone wants to buy, start getting some cash, then reinvest that cash, make the product better.
So perfect should not be the enemy of the good.
That's it. Yeah.
That's what we were talking about beforehand. My personal philosophy is, be 80% right on Monday, not 100% right on Friday.
Yeah,
every day.
So again, when you buy your phone, I mean, how quickly are there software updates? They're coming at a rush.
Yeah.
You know, and those software updates are actually parts of the development process that, well, we can't get that ready for release, so we'll add that a month later.
Welcome to Season 2 of the Growth Trust podcast series. In today's podcast, we focus on the power of research and development to transform small and medium business enterprises. And we also provide some tips on how you, as a business owner, can cultivate a culture of innovation. This Growth Trust podcast series focuses on the issues facing many small and medium business enterprises that play such an important role in the Australian economy. In fact, the latest figures show small businesses contributed more than $500 billion to the local economy, equivalent to a third of the nation's GDP. This Growth Trust podcast series is brought to you by the Australian Centre for Business Growth. Today we're chatting with Anthony Kittel, the CEO and Managing Director of RedArc Electronics, a leading Australian manufacturer of power electronics products for a host of markets, including automotive, defence, mining, marine and space. It's a sector requiring ongoing investment in R&D and thrives on a culture of innovation. But how does a CEO foster that culture of idea sharing and innovation? Well, Anthony is here to pass on some of his hard-won experience and insight alongside the Director of the Australian Centre for Business Growth, Ryan Williams, who's written an article on SME Innovation on the Centre's website. Well, Anthony, thanks very much for being a part of the podcast. Let's go right back to the beginning. Tell us about the beginnings of the company.
Yeah, so RedArc was formed in a house in Blackwood in the Adelaide Hills, and the founder was a gentleman called Bob Mackey back in 1979. He developed some electronics. First product was an ignition system for a Porsche, which he owned. He thought he could design a better system than the OEM version, and he did. We still have that product proudly on display at RedArc. So Bob developed the business, some automotive products over the next 16 years. Unfortunately, around that time, he became ill, moved to Queensland to do R&D, and eventually passed away from cancer. So his wife then ran the company for a couple of years under management, 8 staff, hand-loading electronics, very much a cottage industry out of Lonsdale. And in 1997, put the company up for sale. And that was when myself and my father-in-law went 50-50 to buy RedArc in September of 1997.
So what did you see in it?
I guess we had a bit of a wish list of things that we're looking for in a company, and manufacturing was definitely one of those. We obviously had to be at the right size. We could afford to buy it. Mm-hmm. Quality, the fact that they had some systems in place, and ideally, making a profit, that would have been nice. So RedArc ticked those boxes, although it had a couple of lean years because the founder had passed on, and so the R&D aspects of the business, the product development had really slowed to a walk. We had a steep learning curve to get in there. I'm a mechanical engineer, background in manufacturing and automotive. But the learning curves was really around the electronics, understanding the industry, because we never really knew anything about the products. And so what RedArc did primarily at that time was a voltage conversion, which is taking mainly in the trucking industry. So European and Japanese trucks run on a 24-volt electrical system, and American trucks run on a 12-volt electrical system. So 1 battery, 2 batteries. And RedArc was the company that provided the black box to make sure that if you're running a radio in a European truck, the radio is 12 volt, the system's 24 volt, you needed a step-down converter, and that's what RedArc did. I had no idea what they were, but we got in there and, the fundamentals of the business we thought were good. So we set about to resurrect the company, the quality was failing, the customer service was deteriorating. So we had lots of things we had to get in and fix. That took 3 years. So from 97 to 2000. So in the year 2000, we'd grown the revenue to $1 million. So we sort of increased about 30%. We'd taken the original 8 staff and grown that to 10. And, started, I guess, to be able to a little bit less stress and fix quite a number of the problems, stabilize our customer base. And then it was a chance really to sit down and take a breath and think, well, what's the future hold? And so my father-in-law decided that it was a tough business, and he wanted to step out in 2002, so a couple of years. So we agreed on a plan that he would leave, and then my wife and I would buy her mum and dad's share of the business. And we did that. And in 2002, we owned 100% of the company, and that's when I guess we set up our first strategic plan. And the key pillar of that strategic plan was to set up an R&D company. So we set up this business called RedArk Technologies Proprietary Limited, hired our first R&D engineer, and that's when I sort of did some rough back-of-the-envelope calculations and worked out that we just don't want to be a follower in the R&D space. We want to be world-class. Mm-hmm. So instead of investing 2 or 3 or 4% that the best companies were doing, maybe the best companies in Europe were doing 7 or 8, I worked out that on the back of the envelope, if we invest this much and we can make this much margin and reinvest each year, then 15% is our R&D target. And so we started from 2002 investing 15% of top-line sales, not profit, but top-line revenue back into R&D, building a team. So that one engineer in 2002 is now about 135 engineers today.
Wow.
And obviously we've generated just this last 12 months, I think we put in 28 new products into our range. So it's a continuous
How many
process.
folks in the organization overall?
We've got about 400 people now.
Wow.
Okay.
So 10 to 400. Yeah.
So just going through the history again, though, 2002, you start getting into different sorts of products.
Yeah.
You get into the caravan industry, but
That's
also
correct.
the four-wheel drive industry, which is, big
Yes.
and getting bigger all the time in Australia. And you establish a connection with Pat Callinan's 4x4, which a program that everyone, if you're into four-wheel drives like I am, you know about it.
Yes.
So you're into that technology that's really about safety in the bush, communication in the bush, power in the bush, all of those things.
Yeah. So we set about to build a consumer brand because no one at that time, everyone thought RedArk made batteries, which we didn't make batteries. But that was, when I was in a lift and you get that 30 seconds to chat to someone, what do you do? And, RedArk, I've heard of you guys, you make batteries. So I knew that we needed to develop the brand, and that's when we started to work with some of the influencers in the industry, which was, relatively in its infancy. Although we had the Leyland brothers back in the 70s, it took quite a few years for more and more people to get into that area. So we thought because of the trucking sector was very much tied to the economy, so it had, ups and downs, whereas the 4x4 sector is a bit more steady because you got the tradie, the work market part of it, you got the play market. We thought we'd develop some products, and it's adjacent markets. So build a consumer brand, develop some new products, and really our key platform of technology is around power management. So we're known for providing the auxiliary power systems for any vehicle with a battery that moves. So we're talking about caravans, 4x4s, mining vehicles, trucking, defense, there's a whole range of different applications. And what that power system does, it's called auxiliary because it's the secondary system. It's not the main vehicle system. It's you add it onto the vehicle, but it allows you to take all the things from home and run them remotely. So your microwave, your induction cooktop, your communications, your battery charging systems, all of those sorts of things. So we then set about to not just develop the product, but develop the ecosystem. So how do we link all this together and give you real-time information on your mobile phone so that you can see how much power I've got, how much solar energy I'm getting, how long I can stay in the bush without running out of power, making sure I can still start my vehicle, get from point A to point B safely.
So part of the reason we wanted to really speak to you today is obviously the centre focuses on providing advice and tips and hard-won experience for entrepreneurs coming into the industry. And in the introduction, when I looked at your amazing array of products, it's automotive, defense, mining, marine, and space. And today we're talking about how you keep on innovating. That's such a wide array of different products. How do you make sure that you're providing the right R&D and innovating across such an incredible array of products?
Yeah, so I guess there's a couple of areas there. First one is the process. So we had to really embed a structured R&D process. And so we use a process called the stage gate system. It's well known. You can Google it on the internet. So we design these multi-gate, 6-gate systems. And at gate 0, that's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the idea? What's the business case? Do you think this can be successful? And then once the idea is signed off by the CEO or the financial committee, I guess, who approve the expenditure, we then start to take that business case and turn it into an engineering or customer specification. What's the customer want to buy? And then the engineering, how are the engineers going to achieve what the customer specification is? So there's a whole step. And so we made some mistakes. You got to learn the hard way. But it's a really structured program now. And our project managers are the people that look after all of that process to make sure it's done with the right intent and the right methodical process. So that was the first thing. The second part is that we wanted to develop technology platforms that we could take into adjacent markets because we spend so much money on R&D. Just say, for instance, this last year we invested, around $15 million in R&D. Mm-hmm. It's a huge amount of money in South Australia. So how do you leverage that intellectual property spend? So we do it in a couple of ways. We look at what adjacent markets we can take that original platform and adjust it to suit different markets. So we can
example of that?
So an example might be one of our latest power platforms. We're able to take that in for the four-wheel drive sector, for charging the batteries and managing the power system. We're able to take that into the defense sector, ruggedize it, battle harden it, and provide power on the move for the soldier. So that if they're running communication systems out in the battlefield, our systems will allow them to power their radios.
Would this maybe be a portable solar panel or something like that?
It could be. Solar could be part of it, but the crux of the system is all the electronics that for charging and the battery backup, and then they can power their radios. So the most critical piece of kit is their radio communications. So we'll be able to power that radio for them whilst they're out remotely.
Because you wouldn't want to have to spool up a diesel engine when in an active theatre, I'd have thought.
Exactly.
We're over here.
Yeah, and
I love that term that you use too, ruggedize it. You got to really put it through a test.
We do, and so part of our R&D process over the years, we've invested heavily in the testing capabilities. So we've got a whole range of equipment to test temperature, to test vibration, to test for electromagnetic compatibility. So the radio frequency emissions in the product. So we've invested in that technology so it exists in Lonsdale, so we can be a one-stop shop. Our engineer who designs the product can take the product just down the aisle to the test department. They can test it and give instant feedback to say, oh, look, the design's got some weaknesses here, tweak that, come back, retest, within a matter of hours or days.
Part of it, I think, that was fascinating for me when I had the lucky privilege of a tour through the facility probably 4 or 5 years ago now. And I think recently you'd invested in a whole bunch of cobots.
Yes.
And so it's not just the innovation around the product development side, but also the innovation around the manufacturing side.
Yeah.
That would have been, is that class leading for SA? I would have thought that was right at the front end.
Yeah. So we, part of, as you mentioned, we've developed another team of engineers. There's about 25 engineers who work in manufacturing engineering. So their job is to design the cells that can manufacture the product. And I guess so we can keep manufacturing here in South Australia, we need to do it at a very cost-effective, in a cost-effective manner. And the best way to do that is with automation. We still need people, smart people, but how can we take the mundane tasks and automate them? So in the cell that Ryan's referring to is that we had 3 cobots, collaborative robots, and these 3 arms work together to build a product every 55 seconds.
Wow.
So they take the electronics, put it into an enclosure, they load the software, they test it, and then it pops out the end for an operator to package it ready for sale. So it's how do you design for manufacture? So in that product, one of the key things was how do we eliminate fasteners or screws?
Yep.
Because we don't, that's time consuming. And so we had to design nice clip fit plastics, which are made here locally in Adelaide, the electronics, so that the electronics clip in nicely as well, and make it still suitable for mounting in a vehicle.
And it's got to be rugged as well.
It's got to be rugged, and it's got to survive in a whole different range of temperatures. And so that whole design thinking is not just what the product application is, but how you're going to manufacture it for the right amount of cost.
Right. And I noticed just recently that you've just completed the first stage of a $50 million 2-story advanced manufacturing technology hub at Lonsdale. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that actually opened last Tuesday. So this hub it's a building that was built in 1995. So it's 20 years old. It was built by the state government for solar optical for all of the R&D for plastic lenses. So that solar was
it solar optical?
Yes,
I remember doing a yarn on them many 30 years ago.
30, yeah, correct.
Wow.
Yeah, my maths is no good there, but 30 years ago. So this building was it's a really nice, solid building, but it's tired and needed a lift. So we've totally gutted the ground floor, made it into a really modern innovation center, advanced manufacturing technology hub. So we've got roughly 100 of our innovation specialists. We've just moved in there.
So you're still investing 12 to 15% each year?
We are.
Which really, in terms of the Australian story about R&D, is exceptional, because most companies historically have spent somewhere between 3 and 4%.
Yeah, definitely. And again, when we set about that first strategic plan in 2002, is how do we differentiate ourselves on the global stage? And investing in innovation and R&D was one of the key pillars that I made sure that we wanted to develop a strong brand, world-class products, invest in R&D and innovation was up there.
And you speak about being globally competitive. I mean, that's opened up international markets for you. I mean,
yeah. So we're selling, I think, roughly about 38 countries today.
Wow.
We have a dozen people full time in the United States, and that business is equal to our defence business. So in 2015, we wanted to diversify our business because we're heavily R&D, heavily 4x4 and caravan.
Mm-hmm.
And some trucking, but we thought, well, how do we diversify? So that's when we looked at the adjacent markets. So we set up the defence and space business, and then we set up the export business and actually started to focus on North America as a key market. Started to hire people on the ground and build the brand in the US. So, I was just on a call with the US this morning with someone I've not met before. Talked about RedArk, and they said, we're into off-roading and we know the RedArk brand, so it's that
that's
sort
pretty
of
cool.
That recognition. Yeah, it was just nice to hear.
When did you launch into the US?
Look, we started pioneering in that market in 2015. And I guess started to hire on the ground people in about 2019, 2020. And as I say, now we've got about 12 people. But we heavily invested in the brand, and in the US, the 4x4 market is called overlanding. So again, working with influencers and getting our brand out there. The good thing was we didn't have to start from scratch, because a lot of the US overlanders watch our Australian 4x4 content.
Do they?
Because when you think about industries globally,
well, this is one of the great places to test anything out here.
Australia is world leading in 4x4 accessories.
Yeah.
We've got ARB, who've been around since the 70s.
Yep.
But there's a whole range of other SMEs that are world class in that 4x4 accessory market.
I'm just interested, though. I mean, it's such an amazing story. Diversification, such a fundamental part. But in so many businesses, you also hear that they diversify so much that they lose sight of their core business. How do you maintain, that focus that you had from the very beginning?
Look, I think that again, that comes back to the plan. So we know our core business, where that lies in that sort of 4x4 RV caravan sector, and we call that the play market. And then we have what we call the work market. The work market is defence. It's contractors, tradies, utilities, emergency services, defence and space. And so, these are really the two areas that we concentrate our investment. and it tells us, it helps us, yes, we invest or no, because if it's outside of that, then it's a no. Otherwise, we start to lose direction and get lost. And
but there's, so I mean, there's I dare say a business like yours where you've got a core business that's got runway and is going to remain viable. And there are other industries where I see large companies fail because their core products got an existential crisis coming down the pike. I think of the movie industry and what happened when streaming started up and pay television, actually probably more so from a streaming point of view. But all these cable providers have been charging a bloody fortune, and they've got that innovator's dilemma, right? They can't.
Well, it's a Kodak moment, isn't it?
Yeah. Do I want to eat all my own lunch in order to be front facing? Funny enough, the Kodak folks, I was talking to somebody who'd been involved in that organization in the States, and they'd said to me, we didn't miss digital cameras. We didn't miss digital tech. The mistake we made is we just didn't realize people wouldn't want to print anymore.
Yes. Yeah.
That was actually the fundamental issue.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't about they had their own
printing those photos.
Their assumption was, it's like these days. When I was growing up as a kid, you'd have the book that you open up and there are, 12 snaps or 36 snaps, depending on what camera, your dad or your mum had. And there's, a picture of your brother's graduation, and there was a picture of a family birthday and 3 pictures from the holiday. These days, it's I open up my phone and here's 14,000 pictures of what I had for breakfast.
And you can never find any of the photos you want.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So, I guess, so when we think about that, I guess one of the key technology changes coming, and it's here, but it's taking a little while, is electric vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So we're used to putting our power systems onto ICE vehicles. How do we make sure that they're integrated and work with hybrid and with EVs? And then how does the four-wheel driver take their EV out in the bush?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's all these technological changes that are happening at the moment that we need to keep on top of, because we don't want that Kodak moment. We want to make sure that as the EV stream comes in and starts to take over, that RedArk is again your trusted supplier of power systems for that.
So what would you say to a young South Australian entrepreneur who keeps tabs on what the centre's doing and needs some tips about how to manage innovation, how to get the best out of their staff, not kill ideas, but promote the best ideas?
Yeah, look, it's I think it's a bit of a recipe. First up, you have to have a growth mentality. So you got to think, where do you want to take the business, or where what's the future look like for you? So you got to have that vision, and you got to be able to describe that vision to your staff, because you want to take them on the bus with you.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure everyone's on the bus. That's the key. You don't want people that are deciding, do we want to be on the bus or not? Then you got to create the environment. I think if to have a great innovative environment, a lot of the ideas are around the coffee machine or in the corridor or post meetings. They're not actually in the meeting, or where you least expect it. So it's around the lunch table, those sorts of things. So have an environment where people are encouraged to swap ideas. And I won't go into the work from home debate, but I think having people together collaborating is a great thing that we can't do on Teams. So to be able to work together, swap ideas, swap notes, and whether that be in the office or informally, but people have got to come together. And
there's something about sort of, over the years, I've noticed with folks out of engineering disciplines, that drive to solve the problem.
Yeah.
I think is a good aggregator in this lane.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And the thing about being an engineer myself, the thing about engineers, we strive for perfection, but don't let good enough is okay. I see so many SMEs, and one of the tips would be, don't strive for perfection, because you'll never get the product to market. The key is get a minimum viable product to market that someone wants to buy, start getting some cash, then reinvest that cash, make the product better.
So perfect should not be the enemy of the good.
That's it.
Yeah. That's what we were talking about beforehand. My personal philosophy is, be 80% right on Monday, not 100% right on Friday. Every day.
So again, when you buy your phone, I mean, how quickly are there software updates? They're coming at a rush.
Yeah.
And those software updates are actually parts of the development process that well, we can't get that ready for release, so we'll add that a month later. We'll add that 2 months later. So the product's continually improving and taking on consumer feedback.
How do you create enough breathing room? I'm trying to think about the best way to frame this question. How do you create enough breathing room for those innovators in the organization to be able to immerse themselves in what is now a very rapidly changing technological landscape, much faster than I can recall in my career? Because I think sometimes, particularly in sort of SME landscape, you run the risk of having folks that are so busy on the tools, and your expectation is that, well, you need to be abreast of the latest developments in machine learning or AI or energy or whatever it is. How do you create slack, I think is the word that the CEDA folks used. How do you create slack in the business?
Time to just, think about ideas.
Yeah. Look, I think in an SME that's a real challenge. And the only way you can do it is to collaborate and partner. And because you just can't do everything yourself. And so those people that are in there doing things need to keep doing things because they're the ones who are generating the product to generate the cash. So they can't be distracted. But as you say, we need to bring in the innovators. And sometimes you can't employ them because you just the cash flow of the company can't afford it. So you got to collaborate with either design houses, with universities, with consultants, and buy that, maybe buy some of that in to what your core business is, and maybe there's an element of your tech that needs to be developed that you just haven't got the resource to do it, and you can't afford to put a full-time resource on, but maybe we can work with a PhD at the university, or maybe we can work with a consulting firm just to do that element of the process, which will help us get to the end game. So it is about collaboration, and it's working closely with partners.
I saw an example years ago in, I think it was Boston Dynamics. And one of the things that they do are endoscopy tubes, these all equipment for scans, and they actually built within this huge organization, this megacorp, they built almost like a startup factory internally with their endoscopy unit because they were losing market share. And one of the things they did that I thought was a stroke of genius is they got customers involved, so surgeons or specialists, as part of the co-creation team. So they invited these folks into the tent to say, well, how do I solve this problem for you? What are you experiencing? I think it's a really great way to think about tackling some of that.
Definitely. Yeah. So look, when I go back to 2002 again and think about that time, one engineer, how do you generate a family of products when you've got one engineer? So that engineer's busy. But I guess, my role was to get out and talk to customers and see what the customers wanted, so I could come back and do a rough specification of this is what I think the next generation of product might look like from the customer's perspective. Then I just went out and found a really good small electronics design consulting firm, gave them the brief, got a proposal, and then we'd work with them to help us design what was still a very successful range of products today in 2025. And that was all on the back of, listening to your customers, working with a consultant, bringing that in. And then our engineer was able to take that and put it into a manufacturable form of product. So
you must have had many products where, your engineers have come back maybe from a four-wheel drive trip or speaking to other four-wheel drivers saying, please, can someone invent this? That's right. It's the thing that we need. And that leads to a whole new product range?
Yeah. I mean, just, a simple example is, comms on the move, so now everyone wants to put a Starlink on their four-wheel drive. Well, how do you power the Starlink?
Yeah.
How can we make a plug-and-play power supply suitable for your Starlink application? So you're right. These people are quick to innovate and think about, well, how can I make my trip, more? I want to be able to communicate with home and the grandkids or whoever it might be, or work remotely. And so they start thinking about, we can put a Starlink on the car, and but I need to have a power supply and.
Developing technology that is understandable too, because when you're out in the bush, I mean, I still have problems with a portable fridge with the second battery, trying to work out how to keep it at the temperature that it's meant to be without draining the battery.
Yes.
Some of this stuff, engineers are wonderful, but I wish occasionally they could come up with a system where it was foolproof in terms of firing up the beast.
Yeah. I think, when you think about our brand and I guess testing products in the outback, there's there's two things. And one is we've got to keep it simple because we need people in the bush to be able to fix it or analyze what's the issues, if there are issues. But most importantly, a product that you only want to buy once. You invest, you put it in your vehicle, it's painless. It gets you from A to B, and it's, when you sell that vehicle, you take it out and put it into your next one. That's the value proposition that we offer to our customers, because we've got many competitors. It's now a crowded landscape with lots of low-cost products coming in from low-cost countries. And so how do we differentiate ourselves? Well, it's very much around buy it once, buy the best, and it will do you forever.
Yeah.
It strikes me that I think the start of that discussion when you were saying 2002, one engineer, I'd go out and listen to customers and then outsource. One of the things that I see as a common failing with SMEs in the innovation space, and perhaps even in the startup arena where with another hat I do some work, and I see folks obsessing about the product piece and trying to come up with the killer app or the killer idea. I'm like, that's great. You're sitting here in your vacuum. The people that are going to pay you for that are out there. And I reckon you'd probably be better served by spending a bit more time chatting to them first before you're trying to design the thing. I think that's such a great insight.
Yeah, look, I think, and Ron, you hit on it, that the people that are out there doing it know the best, right? So the key thing is, in all of the things that we create, I always love the opportunity of what we call lead customers. So these are people that are the early innovators, the early adopters that are willing to test and hopefully pay for that first version of the product and give you the feedback. And if you've got that early innovator, and you're running that customer forum group where you're getting those people together and swapping notes and saying, if we did this and this and this, what do you think? Oh, could you just tweak that? Because, when we install it, we've got this little inconvenient spot where we need to get it into. Can you do this for us? Suddenly you got a great outcome.
Yeah.
Product sales lifted 30%. And we thought, actually, we were onto something.
Yeah.
And that was purely because, we're out in the field talking to auto electricians, and I was saying, this is our problem.
Yeah.
And we need you to fix it. Otherwise, we can't fit this product anymore.
Yeah.
So we did that. And then we thought, well, actually, what about we do it wireless, the next generation, Gen 2, make it wireless, make it easier to install. And sales went up and up again. And at that time, we had roughly 30%, maybe 25% of the market. And through Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3, we've gone from that 25 to about 85.
Wow.
Just through really smart innovation and listening to your customer.
So as we wrap this podcast up, what would be your advice to a young SME operator, needing to innovate as much as possible and staying ahead of the game?
Look, I think make it a key priority of your business. Have that vision of where you want to go. Write it down so you've got a bit of a plan. Get your staff involved. They've got to, it's not my business, it's our business. So get them part of the team, and hire smart people, and work with great partners like the universities, and take on great talent.
And maintain links with the consumer base all the time.
And never lose touch with your customer.
Yeah.
Never lose touch with your customer.
Well, Anthony, it's been a wonderful chat and an amazing story.
Thank you.
I must come out and see that solar optics place, because we were doing a yarn on it many, many years ago. I'd love to see it.
Love to show you.
Thank you very much for taking us through the story of your company.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks
for your time.
Thanks for your company today. If you'd like more information about the issues raised in this podcast or other related topics, please visit our website at www.centreforbusinessgrowth.com. And a quick reminder that you can always tune into the Growth Trust podcast series on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. Bye for now.